Today we are writing a success criteria for a newspaper report. It will help us to think about the details of a text before we write it, and we are going to be writing a newspaper report about Philippe Petit's wire walk. So it's really helpful if we look at a good example and identify why it's a good example. We are going to unpick the model text today and then decide what we want to include in our own newspaper reports. And this week we will be writing them, and I know that means we'll be writing them at home and we'll be away, but remember, you're going to be sending me your work. You can always ask me questions through Class Dojo, send me sections to look through and give you feedback. It's going to be easier than ever for you to get responses to your writing quickly and appropriately. So it's going to be a good opportunity for us to get a good piece of writing done. We're going to use our Pearl Power because we're going to be using the skills we've already learnt over the last few weeks. We're going to be using the grammar we've learnt and the information from the story that we've been reading. So pause the video now and reread the model text. You'll find it beneath this video. Or if you prefer, go back to the reading video from earlier and watch the first section where I read the text to you. This is what we're going to do today. We are going to find evidence in the model text. I'm going to give you something to look for in the text, and then you need to write down or type an idea, and then once you've done all of the different ideas, send it to me. Once I know you're on the right track and you're identifying the correct information, then I know you're ready to write, and that's really important for us to have that shared understanding. So for example, I might ask you to find the headline. So you'll need to look through the text again and find the headline. Now this one's quite an easy one. It's at the top of the page there, The Height of Madness. And what you'll need to do is either type or write evidence. So write down headline or find the headline and then write the headline. You don't need to change it, just write it as it is. So let's have a go. Find the place the event happened in. There's a few different answers you could have for this one, depending on how specific you want to be. Find the person who carried out the event. Find evidence of what he did. You may want to pause the video now to give yourself some time to look through the model text and find the evidence. You may also want to just write down those keywords place, person and what, so that you know what you're looking for as you're reading, and then write your answers. Find an example of a capital letter being used, but not for the start of a sentence. Again, you might want to write down a little note so you know what you're looking for. Pause the video and have a little look through the model text. Find an example of a comma being used, and the challenge is to explain how it is being used. So we know that commas can be used to show a sentence is starting with an adverb or adverbial, to show a sentence is starting with subordination, so your I saw a wubub or a white bus. And also commas can be used to show that there is an embedded clause, so a relative clause, a subordinate clause, or even an adverbial that fits in between a sentence and still makes good sense. Pause the video to give yourself time to write down a little note and find some evidence in the text. Now this one, as much as you like, find an example of other punctuation being used. You might want to look for one or two different examples or try and find all the different punctuation in the text. Remember to write down the sentence that the punctuation is linked to. That's much better because then you'll be able to use that sentence or innovate that sentence in your own text. Find an example of a subordinate clause. Try and remember what I saw a wubub stands for. Pause the video to give yourself a chance to find an example. And remember, you might want to write the main clause and the subordinate clause so that you can use it more effectively in your own writing. Find an example of a relative clause. Now be careful. We know that relative pronouns can be used, but sometimes we know that they are omitted or left out so that there's less words in the text. Find an example of passive voice. Now, we only just did this before you all went home, so give yourself a little chance to remind yourself of what passive voice is, and I've given you a clue. Remember was or were, and then by. Often it's the object, what is done to the object, and by who. Challenge. Find an example of passive voice where the subject is omitted. And we did a little bit of work, some of us, on looking out for those examples and writing those examples ourselves. Once you've finished finding different examples in the text, I want you to think about 3 features that you want to make sure you include in your newspaper report and record them either on a Word document or on your piece of paper or your notebook, whatever you're using. And you can select from the following ideas, or you can select your own. So parenthesis, something that we've learned this term, subordinate clauses, high-level punctuation. We've looked at using brackets, dashes and commas for parenthesis, and previously we looked at colons and semicolons, relative clauses, passive voice, both looked at this term for this piece of writing, and capital letters and full stops. Always one to remember, always one to use. And challenge yourself as well. Write some examples using the key features, and that will give you a head start that when you come to write your own newspaper report, you'll already have some really good sentences that you may use. As always, I need to see that work, so send it in using Class Dojo. Either send a document of your work or take a photograph if you've written it on paper. This will help me to see what we need to do next in our learning, and I can tailor it to suit you. Bye for now.